Hi, good evening. It's Soraya Mia, and you are watching AWANI Tonight. Bank Negara announces surprise interest rate hike, but will this tame inflation? And what's stopping Malaysia from implementing a 4-day work week? That's coming up. Bank Negara has unexpectedly raised its benchmark interest rate by 25 basis points to 2%, the first hike since July 2020. This is on the back of increasing inflationary pressure caused by high commodity prices, strained supply chains, and strong demand conditions. The latest move by BNM is a contrast to a near-unanimous consensus of a stable monetary policy. Polls by Reuters and Bloomberg suggested that the central bank was expected to keep its overnight policy rate unchanged at 1.75%, the lowest level on record. BNM said that several central banks are expected to rapidly adjust their monetary policy settings to reduce inflationary pressures. The country's latest headline inflation data remain unchanged at a 6-month low at an average between 2.2% to 3.2%. However, underlying inflation as measured by core inflation is expected to trend higher to average between 2.0% to 3.0% for this year. Now, Bank Negara's surprise move is seen as a preemptive measure to curb rising prices. We speak to Carmelo Ferlito from Center for Market Education on the decision.
The decision of raising the interest rate doesn't produce an automatic cooling down of prices. It depends on how that decision is interpreted, both by consumers and investors. Furthermore, there is a time lag between the moment in which the decision is taken and the effects are produced. So it doesn't happen overnight, like nothing in the economic process. And finally, there is the risk, while we are at the beginning of the economic recovery post-COVID, that this will discourage investments and therefore bring along a recession.
The U.S. Central Bank had last week announced a 0.5% interest rate hike, its highest increase in more than 20 years. The move comes as a number of other countries cut lending rates to deal with rising prices. But how would rising borrowing costs impact growth and investments?
There are investors, domestically and internationally, that are at the doors of Malaysia or are already in the country thinking if they have to invest more to create more economic development. And they will decide so only if they expect strong and stable returns. We should not frustrate that expectations, creating a climate of uncertainty, creating bad policies. So if the general policy environment is business friendly, then the impact of a raise on the interest rate will be limited. Instead, if we are surrounded by a negative environment for profit expectations, then the raise of the interest rate will play harder on investment decisions.
The names of 5 doctors alleged to be bullies at the Penang hospital have been handed to the Health Ministry for further action. Penang Health Exco Dr. Nurlela Arifin, however, said the doctors were not linked to the case of the houseman who fell to his death from an apartment last month. She said the case is still under police investigation.
Nurlela said she handed over the 5 names to the Health Ministry after reading that the Negeri Sembilan Health Exco did the same by handing over names of 2 doctors allegedly involved in bullying. Last week, the Health Ministry said it will form an independent task force to investigate the incident of a houseman who fell to his death from his apartment building just 3 weeks after being posted to Penang Hospital. The death of the houseman in Penang has raised concerns of work culture in hospitals.
In other news, there has been a lot of talk about the potential benefits of working a 4-day week instead of a 5-day week. But is this feasible in Malaysia? We ask SME Association of Malaysia, Samantha's Datuk William Ng, for his thoughts.
In some industry, for example, you look at restaurants and retail and a supermarket and so on, it's simply not possible without a major overhaul not just to our business and how we operate, and assign our staff, but also to customer expectation. For example, as a customer, are you willing to do more as a customer? Not only into the self-service for food, for example, but we can't even send back the tray after we finish eating. Forget about self-service. I think if you remember during Ramadan, even 5 minutes late, customers are already giving negative rating. So if you really want a 4-day work week, I think first of all, we must change our own expectations and behaviors as a society. Until that is done, I think let's not even talk about 4 days work week.
He said one way forward is for companies to start measuring productivity of work so that employers can take necessary steps to implement shorter work weeks.
Whether or not we can afford a 4 days work week is really dependent on our ability, SMEs especially, to measure and also to manage productivity. If you look at it right now, most of our SMEs simply are not able to track productivity accurately. And if they do, the current labor laws do not allow us to take action in case of poor productivity. If the staff don't come on time, for example, then we can perhaps take some corrective action. But if the person, for example, is short, a shortfall of 5-10% in the productivity, there's nothing you can do about it. So the labor law doesn't allow that. So until as a country, our society, and also our law understand and allow us to pay, or rather the pay to be tied to productivity, it will be quite impossible to implement a 4 days work week without a severe disruption to business, without badly affecting our business.
The popularity of a shorter work week grew during the pandemic, but the reality of the implementation is more complicated. Malaysian Trades Union Congress MTUC Deputy President Muhammad Effendi Abdul Ghani says 4-day work week needs further analysis based on specific industries' requirements.
Maybe it's not a new for the multinational company, because they need to have some multinational company, they need to operate for 7 days a week, but the employees will work for 4 days a week. But maybe for overall, maybe this is new things to be explored. And yes, I do agree that some say that they were good for the employees, because once they have the 3 days on the say that 3 days for rest day, I think maybe it make the more relaxed or well-being for the workers in Malaysia more fresh, and the quality of work may be much better. But again, we believe that is more depends on the requirement of the industry, because not all the industry was relevant to implement 4 days a week, but some industry may be relevant to implement 4 days a week.
Effendi said that proper guidelines need to be put in place before implementation to prevent workplace exploitation.
Some employer would take the advantage, okay, we can give you 4 days a week, but we can reduce your salary, we can reduce your allowances or benefit or so on. That's why this is thing that we need to discuss together among the employer, like Saprata, employer, employees and government, how to set the one of the SOP if they have the 4 days a week. Because, in the Employment Act, they're not stated 4 days or 5 days or 3 days, because they only say that 45 hours in a week. There's one including the rest day, including the lunch hour also. But if you take off the lunch hour 1 hour, then it become about around 38 hours a week. I think this is in line with the 4 days a week, because they have difference about 6 hours. Because if you go 4 days a week, work a week is ideally is about 32 hours a week. There's no loss of productivity, pay or benefit. That's why we're worried on this part, because we don't want to any employer will take advantage on the implementation of 4 days a week.
Now we'll continue after the break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. On the foreign front, Israeli forces was accused of killing Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh in the occupied West Bank today. She was hit by a live bullet while covering raids in the city of Jenin. Visuals showed Abu Akleh, a U.S. citizen, was wearing a press-labeled vest when she was shot. The 51-year-old was a well-known Palestinian reporter for the broadcaster's Arabic language channel. Another Al Jazeera journalist, producer Ali Al-Samoudi, was also wounded in the incident. The Israeli army confirmed it had conducted an operation in Jenin refugee camp, but denied it deliberately targeted a reporter. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka's President Gotabaya Rajapaksa urged people to reject what he calls attempts to stir up racial and religious disharmony. His warning comes amid clashes across the country over the government's handling of its worst economic crisis since 1948. Sri Lanka has had a long and bloody history of ethnic tensions. Meanwhile, 8 people were killed while over 200 injured in violence that erupted between government and anti-government protesters this week. President Gotabaya's brother Mahinda Rajapaksa offered his resignation as prime minister, but that did little to quell the public's anger. Protesters demand that the president step down. They blame the Rajapaksa family for the economic crisis that has led to soaring prices, food shortages, and electricity cuts in the past month. On Tuesday, the government ordered soldiers to shoot at anyone damaging public property after police said protesters burned down homes belonging to 38 politicians from the ruling party. In other news, Russian President Vladimir Putin is preparing for a long war in Ukraine, according to U.S. intelligence. It warned that even a Russian victory in the east of Ukraine might not end the war. The assessment comes as fierce fighting continues in Kharkiv. Moscow refocused its troops on capturing the Donbas region after Ukraine resisted attempts to take its capital, Kyiv. U.S. Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, warned that Putin is determined to build a land bridge to Russian-controlled territory in Moldova. It is also increasingly likely that Putin will mobilize the entire country, including ordering martial law, and is counting on his perseverance to wear down Western support for Ukraine. Billionaire Elon Musk said he would reverse Twitter's ban on former U.S. President Donald Trump when he buys the social media platform. Musk, the world's richest person, has called himself a free speech absolutist, but given few specific details of his plans.
The question of reinstating Trump has been seen as a litmus test of how far Musk will go in making changes to Twitter, even though Trump himself has said he would not return. The chief executive of Tesla has repeatedly criticized Twitter's content moderation decisions, including the Trump ban. Trump's account was banned in January 2021 for incitement of violence, following the January 6 mob attack on the U.S. Capitol.
I do think that it was not correct to ban Donald Trump. I think that was a mistake because it alienated a large part of the country and did not ultimately result in Donald Trump not having a voice. He is now going to be on Truth Social, as will a large part of the right in the United States, and so I think this could end up being, frankly, worse than having a single forum where everyone can debate. I guess the answer is that I would reverse the perma ban. Obviously, I don't own Twitter yet, so this is not like a thing that will definitely happen, because what if I don't own Twitter?
Musk has inked a $44 billion deal to buy Twitter.
I think it was
The decisive victory of Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in the Philippines presidential election on Monday is set to reshape the country's relations and dynamics in this region. Tonight on Consider This, we discuss with our guests about the aftermath of the election. That's coming right up after AWANI Tonight. That's all we have for you on AWANI Tonight. My name is Raya Mia. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again tomorrow.